Hey, just a reminder that this humble little YouTube channel is so dependent on people just like you. There are three main ways you can support this channel, and they're all over at spiritblade.com. The first is to purchase one of our sci-fi or fantasy audio dramas. Second is to give us a donation of any amount. And third, you can become a Spirit Blade insider and get access to exclusive, behind-the-scenes monthly goodies. You can get more information on our About page over at spiritblade.com. Thanks so much. Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about Colossal? Stick around and find out. Dun dun dun! I don't know, there's like, there's like 5 themes for Godzilla. I looked on YouTube, I was gonna sing the Godzilla theme, and there's like 5 or 6, or I don't know how many, so you got whatever the crap that was instead. Hi, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review of the movie Colossal. The synopsis on IMDb reads, Gloria is an out-of-work party girl forced to leave her life in New York City, and move back home when reports surface that a giant creature is destroying Seoul. Like Seoul, I think South Korea, isn't that where that is? Like S-E-O-U-L, Seoul. So, when reports surface that a giant creature is destroying Seoul, she gradually comes to the realization that she is somehow connected to this phenomenon. This was one that I don't think it had much of a marketing budget. I think it's kind of a small movie and wasn't really on my radar a whole bunch. I vaguely remember hearing something about it maybe around the time that it was in theaters in 2016, I believe. And I just recently spotted this one on Redbox, decided to try it out as kind of a fun date night movie with my wife, and we were captivated by this movie. Even watching the trailer, you're not quite sure what to expect, and this is going to be a spoiler-free review if you're concerned at all about that, because a lot of the fun of the experience for me was the realization that I have no idea where this movie is going. It was great because it has elements of dark drama, dark comedy, romantic comedy, and giant city-stomping monster movie, you know? And when I tried to think, okay, so it's going to adhere to such and such a trope from this movie, then instead it would adhere to a trope from one of the other types of movies, or just go in a direction I didn't expect. It was just like, up until about halfway through the movie, the plot really defies categorization to me as far as genre goes. It feels like an unusual mashup during the first half of the movie of rom-com and like some kind of Godzilla type thing until about halfway through. And then it just totally went off the rails for me and left me guessing whether or not it was ever going to get back on track with some kind of genre conventions. And I won't say whether it ever got back on track with rom-com expectations or not, because wondering until the very end is what made it such a delight for me. So I would suggest I really don't want to say much more about what this movie experience is. I would say go in with an openness to the unexpected, not wanting any certain kind of movie, because if you go in wanting any one of those kinds of movies that I listed, then I think you're going to be like, at some point go, what the crap, this isn't what I wanted, you know? But if you go in with an openness to a blend of different, you know, types of movies and experiences and plot paths, then you might end up being captivated, laughing, and cringing all in the space of a minute, as happened to me, I think, at least a handful of times in the second half of the movie. Yeah, it was like, oh yeah, really, really unusual and delightful. As far as the cast goes, it's led by Anne Hathaway, and all of them I thought were solid, but I thought really that the story was the star of this one, and the actors just succeeded in bringing it to life, rather than especially elevating it for me, which it didn't need to be elevated. It was great, you know, with just like plugging in some solid actors, we're off to the races, you know. As far as the stunts and visuals go, for a small, somewhat, I don't know, like, if this were like, if I were looking at this as like a small indie movie, which it I think kind of is, or a comedy, or a romantic comedy, none of those three, except for maybe sometimes, you know, small indie movies nowadays it's getting a little more common, but normally in those kinds of movies you wouldn't expect really great effects, you know, especially the more comedic a sci-fi movie is, especially if it's a full-out, you know, sci-fi comedy, then they're going to go cheaper on the visual effects, knowing that they don't need those visual effects to carry the experience. But I felt like they approached this movie saying, no, we're not going to lean on the comedic elements or whatever else, or the fact that it's a smaller movie and, lowering people's expectations as a result of it being a smaller movie. No, I felt like that they really gave it their all in the visual effects department. And the giant monster effects, I thought really looked great. I mean, they could almost, I could almost believe that they used blown up puppetry instead of CG in a few shots. So yeah, I really was surprised. I was like, wow. I think that's part of what made the movie difficult to categorize, because I was like, well, these effects don't make it feel like a comedy, But there was definitely, a number of moments where I was laughing, but it's definitely not a comedy all the way through. Anyway, I don't want to get back on the plot stuff. So this isn't going to be a very long review because, like I said, I don't have much to say about it, but except to say that it was the biggest surprise of the year for me, and I would definitely, well, I don't know what your tastes are, so I don't know how to recommend it. But before I get to kind of my final thoughts on it, I do try to ask myself whenever I'm watching a movie or taking in, any kind of fiction entertainment, is there anything of worthwhile moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance going on in the themes here that might stimulate worthwhile thought and conversation? Absolutely, in my experience with this movie, the theme that strongly stood out to me is that we are all capable of becoming destructive monsters without realizing it. We can all do horrible damage and hurt people through our careless actions and words. And that may be even more true of us as geeks who sometimes just aren't aware of how we're coming across to people socially, We can all just do we can do damage to the people that are in our lives, or the people that we just casually interact with, whether they're close relationships or people that we just kind of run into from time to time. At least 3 characters in this movie do really great harm to people in their day-to-day lives, the people that they're closest to, and only one of them seems to realize it and take responsibility for that at some point. It's easy for me to look at, characters like this that are kind of designed to show you, oh, this person's being reckless, they don't realize what they're doing to other people. It's easy for me to look at characters like that in fiction and think to myself, man, those people are messed up, and almost in a very subtle, unspoken way, even in my own mind, kind of like a shame on them, But in truth, if I'm really honest, if I choose to take the time and examine myself, then I see in these characters that they're just exaggerations of the same kind of carelessness that I can have in my relationships with people. I think of my relationship with my wife. In our highly individual-focused entertainment culture, we have lots of stories that are about like this hero, this chosen one, this person that's unique and different and special, and they are the ones that are going to do great things and bring about change and da-da-da. It's very individual-focused, and so we tend to kind of engage in those fantasies and imagine ourselves like, wow, what if I was like that person? That's kind of the fantasy fulfillment there. And so I think maybe because of that, it's all the easier to kind of think of ourselves in terms of like kind of as almost as the main character, the hero of our own personal stories. And when other people wrong us, then they're like kind of the villains in our story. I'm just trying to do this, da-da-da-da, and we don't really want to paint ourselves as the villain. We don't really want to examine that possibility. Am I the villain in their story? But the question I asked myself after watching this movie was, man, how many times each week am I the villain in, say, my wife's story? How many times am I careless and selfish in ways that, maybe don't destroy lives and cause a bunch of drama like, was going on in this movie, but maybe just kind of take the wind out of somebody's sails, or maybe do worse, that they, it's not quite bad enough that it's going to cause a stink and they're ever going to communicate that to me, but it in a subtle way damages my relational equity with them, my ability to speak into their life in a meaningful way at some point in the future. There's just little subtle bits of damage that we can do in our relationships, damage that we can do in terms of just our ability to represent Christ, because of the carelessness with which we approach conversations and with which we approach life in general. So that was kind of what came to mind, and that I started kind of really thinking about. This movie gave both my wife and I a lot to talk about afterwards, and so yeah, the question again is, am I doing damage to others without realizing it? What do I need to take responsibility for, or ask forgiveness for, or rely on the mercy of Jesus for? And thankfully we have this tireless forgiveness and grace and mercy of Jesus, so that we can make that, hard choice of examining ourselves really harshly and pointedly, to see where really am I falling short, of the bar of perfection that we are called to, rather than the easy low bar that I set for myself as I try to kind of think of myself as the hero of my own story, And thankfully, because of the grace of Jesus, we can pursue perfection, knowing we're going to stumble and fail and biff all over the place all the time, and his grace and his mercy and his forgiveness will tirelessly catch us in that, as we move forward. So anyway, this movie doesn't naturally force, certainly not that kind of specifically biblical reflection, or even the reflection on oneself of like, am I the monster, the villain in someone else's story? I don't think it naturally does that necessarily, but I hope it's something that we all consider after watching this movie, which was such an unexpected treat for me. Now, I don't know how to recommend this or who to recommend this to, but if I were a time traveler, I would go back in time and say, Peter, dude, buy it. Don't rent it, just buy it. This one you're going to enjoy watching with your wife. You're going to have a ton to talk about with her afterward. And then you'll want to have it on hand so that you can show it to people or lend it out to people who have never heard of this movie. The biggest surprise of the year, don't miss this one, Peter. All right, it's rated R for language, which, it looked all lonely in that ratings box. It was like, rated R for language. It was like, in a movie like this, I was like, yeah, there's no skimpy clothing, going on. There's no, nudity, certainly. And even with the subject of giant monsters destroying, cities and stuff like that, there's really not violence on people that's shown on camera, So even though the subject matter, involves lots of destruction and violence that you're hearing about, So anyway, rated R for language. Those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. Please consider supporting this channel by becoming a Spirit Blade Insider, which grants you exclusive monthly goodies and behind-the-scenes content. For more information, you can visit our About page over at spiritblade.com, where you'll also find our audio dramas, which are on sale right now. Actually, no, the sale is over. The sale, because I'm putting this up on Friday. Sorry, you missed the sale. But anyway, still very reasonably priced audio dramas, and our weekly podcast is there as well. Again, all of that over at spiritblade.com. Also, today, if today is September 1st anyway, I'm doing a live stream, a video game live stream of my favorite video games, running from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. Pacific right here on youtube.com/christiangeekcentral, so I hope you'll check that out. And while you're here, if you want to like, share, and subscribe, that does help our channel and help to grow our community here, which I would love. Finally, there's a ton more content and community over at christiangeekcentral.com. I hope you'll join us there. Can you see this in the glare? I'm still working on that with the lighting. There it disappears. Now it kind of disappears now. Now you can see a little bit better. I don't know. I'm going to have to work something out. But anyway, I hope you'll join us there soon at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.